Hey there. So lately I've been seeing a lot of comic pros coming out and trying to counter our discussions about numbers as we don't know comics. Apparently, when you create a comic book, it opens the ceiling and white light shines down, and apparently you and only you bask in the knowledge of what the industry is. It's amazing what they think comic book fans are. That's their word, comic fan, not comic consumer. Because if you start thinking of us as consumers, then you have to start thinking of it as a money pursuit. And when you think about that, it's an indulgence. Where does indulgence come from? Well, indulgence or escapism is bought with other things. It comes from your real world vocation. What's your real world vocation? Well, some of us are in business. Some of us, enjoy academic pursuits. Some of us make comic books and on. There are people everywhere, and people understand things like business. Now, IDW, it isn't hard to understand, and it is a perfect snapshot of what is wrong in comic books. You see so many people out there right now going in this bad faith operation with comic book consumers. They go out, they attack, they pretend there's nothing wrong. If you talk to them and you mention that there is something, they would tell you that you're lying. You don't know what you're talking about. I've seen that. I've interacted with that. You can promote the actual numbers that their company themselves pull up, but you have somehow made these things up. Now, I would encourage you to go out and find these things yourself. You pull up this report in front of you, and you also pull up the Comichron sales that are for the 3 months that we'll be talking about. We'll go over all of that ourselves, but with this, what you need to do is look up IDW Media Holdings. When you find that, go and click on it. You'll have a drop-down menu across the top. You want to go to the financial reports or annual report if you want to look at last year as well, because you can get the whole year in the annual report, and then you can get the financial reports for quarter one and quarter two. Now, this will include the numbers for quarter one and quarter two together. We are basically focusing on quarter two, but I will still mention what has happened for the year so far, because this is a bleak picture of what comics looks like. Now, the only difference between, say, a Marvel and a company like this is the continuous reboots, forcing LCSs to go out and buy 28 to 42 number ones. Really think about what that says. That's why you have such drop-offs from number one to number two, because it's not just interest there. It's the number of items that are shipped to a place, and that shipment there, some places are trying to keep up, and really to their detriment. When you see 50 or more LCSs close within a year, and you see dozens of them close this year, that says there's a huge problem. But, Marvel, they chug away, they pretend that there's nothing wrong there, and we hear that we don't understand the way that kind of business works. Oh, I understand the gimmicks there. I understand that it's done, again, at the detriment of physical stores out there. While they're sitting there and applauding them, saying, "Oh, I appreciate you hanging around." Well, they're sitting there trying to hang on for dear life, hoping beyond hope that the next time that they put out something, that goes to, say, 10 issues, that they don't drown in the deluge of covers that come out with the next iteration of it. But anyhow, looking at IDW, it doesn't have that portion. That's when you remove that. When you remove the gloss and the glamour of that, what do comic book sales actually look like? You can look at the middle numbers within Comichron too, and you can see what sales look like now, comparing those numbers to sales that existed before. And really, if you want to add 10% to that to say, hey, this is digital, Scholastics, it can be a little bit different within that, but this magic Scholastic number that's thrown around here and there, believing in that, it's much like believing that unicorns exist. If you believe that there's this thing out there that's accounting for millions of dollars over and over again, well, there's an issue there. When we talk about Scholastics too, it's a conversation all of itself. And really, you can talk to Captain Cummings about that. He actually did a very good video with it. But this, it has all of that included for a company. Now, again, companies are different too. And no company is open like this company is open. That is kind of their detriment. When we look at them, they provide a window, and they don't do that willingly. Now, when we start through this, again, you can see their own report here. They provided this report. It's IDW Media Holding Incorporated, indexed to condensed consolidated financial reports. What we're going to do is slide down through here. We don't want to see the breakdown of assets, although if that's something that you want to break down, it is kind of interesting to compare, year to year to see where things were. And also, one of the things that you'll see mentioned in here a few times is October 31st, 2017, where the year starts. That is especially interesting when you get down to equity, or how much the company is valued at, because they have lost value since the beginning of the year, and really high amounts too. Now, when you go through here for the loss for the 3 months alone, we go in 2017 to 2018, 2017, when you go all the way down to net income, and again looking at brackets for loss, you'll notice last time in 2017 for there, they were doing horrible. $1.813 million in loss. Well, this time it's gotten even worse. $2.226 million, because again, this is in thousands in loss. Remember brackets there. Now for the year, you can see 2017 was at $1.686 million. This year, they got hit for over $4 million in taxes on top of the money that they've been losing here. So they're at a loss total this year of $6.713 million so far. They could literally hit a negative $10 million the way that they're going this year. You have no idea what's going to transpire here. The only thing that could pull them out is the possibility of, say, Lock and Key or something else getting into the mix. Now, you can see their net income or loss per share. When your shares look like this across the board, that means that people aren't making money off your company. If I were a shareholder and I held this stock, I would be very upset by the way that this company looks. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people that are not happy about it. Now, when you get into operating activities, you can see like bad debt expenses. You can see all of that stuff and see exactly how it hits the company when you're rolling through. And I think these are interesting, but we can see debt and everything broken down in its own particular sections. Now, going through here too, I want to make sure that I explain some of the things here, talking about, say, EPS or earnings per share. That is why you get these type of reports, because these aren't made for the fun of it. They're basically supposed to break down and tell people what they get for investment. Now, with equity, that is the true value of a company. Like, say you own a car. Say your car is worth $10,000. However, you owe $4,000 in bank loans against it. Now, your car, really, the valuation of that car is about $6,000 there. The equity there, the true value. Well, the company's true value, the balance as of October 31st, 2017, was almost $50 million. Because, again, we're talking thousands. Now, when you look at the chip away here with net loss, $6.713 million, other comprehensive loss at $108,000. So when you put that together and you look at the new balance after 6 months, look at that falling apart. They have lost $6.812 million of value on the company. It has been chipped away from almost 50 to under 45. I mean, that's amazing when you look at a company. Now, when going through this as well, seeing the fact that they have created more stock through last year, this was a way that I felt like they hid some of the problems they had last year. This is something we focused on before talking about it, but I think this is always important to discuss. I mean, when you see them creating more stock, when they go out and they create 317,520 shares and raised $9 million. And then they create more in August 2017, again on the last year, bringing in a total of $10.5 million. They're out there trying to raise capital on hand because they're having huge problems. Companies, when they go in and do that, that's kind of a camouflaging method. That should make people worried. When you look at that, that should really worry a person. You can see further plans to break down and to actually offer more stock as they move forward. So they're further going to chip away at the equity there. Then when you get into notes payable and lines of credit, now all of this is totaled down here at the bottom. You can see how it goes through line by line. And what's interesting is they had a bunch of this stuff paid off as they move forward. But then last year they started really accumulating debt. Now, if you look at the date here of the future maturities under the term loans are as follows. You can see the dates on those here. Now, all of those put together, you're talking about $8.416 million in debt. I mean, you're carrying that much plus the losses that they continue to see. Now, the company itself, it breaks down into three components. You have IDW Entertainment, and CTM. Now, IDW itself, I mean, they go through print and all of that, games and whatnot. It's pretty much comics plus a few other things. IDW Entertainment, they break down movies, shows, and whatnot. And CTE, they have a strange function out there. You can read through. They basically lose money a lot. That seems to be their function these days. Now, when looking at inventory here, you can see the print costs, when you go through. I think this is kind of interesting. And the production and pre-production costs as well. Then you see their income tax note. And as I said, with the income tax note, a lot of people know that Trump's tax cut, it helped out a lot of companies. Well, if you were parking money overseas, it didn't help you out at all. Here's a note on that there. They estimated a reduction of $4.1 million because of that at a blended rate of 23.2%. So that is from the tax hit. Now you can see how that's included here with commitments as well. You can see lease commitments. So there's more money that has to come out later on. There's a lot more money that goes into just that. Now, when we're talking about the portions of the company, you can actually see the breakdown for each listed in the company's breakdown like these. They actually tell you what revenue is and all of that. Now, with IDW, you can see the 6 months and 3 months. At 3 months, when comparing one to the other, they actually did a little bit better as far as considering comic books and games. And apparently games are the reason that they did better when you read through here. They went from losing, again, minus because of brackets, $1.562 million to only losing $1.394 million. Wow. So the change there is $168,000. Unfortunately, it's still all in the negative, but that's still a 10.8% change, right? Now, for the year itself, we're talking about 6 months here. We've gone from $1.452 million in negative to negative $1.730 million. I mean, we're talking a lot of money here, or a change of $278,000 or 19.1%. You can see them talking about revenue declines here of $482,000. Publishing decreased by over $1 million. They experienced a decrease in digital publishing of $111,000 when you go over that. And this is for the 3 months section when they're talking. Now, games revenue actually had an increase here, and you can see the increase in other revenue. So comic books are actually much worse when you go and you subtract those other numbers. If you were to go through, you would be talking about huge hits here. Now, as far as IDW revenue decrease for the 6 months, 1.87. Then publishing decreased by 2.9%. $2.44 million. So that's the actual number. If you want to get down to publishing, they are seeing negatives of almost $2.5 million within comic books, and yet they feel like they can go out and disparage consumers. Now, all the while these people within the industry, they're out there, they're running their mouths, you can see some of the things like selling, general, and administrative actually decrease because you see salary decreases. And when you see salary and benefits decreases, you know what that means? That means somebody's losing a job here. You also see that in the direct cost of revenues. When that decreases, that means you're not producing as many books. And it also means that you don't have as many people on hand. Those people are not getting paid as much because, hey, talk yourself right out of a job. Good job there, by the way, all of these people. And you know what? I've seen at least 10 pros within IDW that have come out and blatantly disparaged people to the point that I no longer care to really give IDW any credit. After they had an editorial change, I had hoped that they would do something better. But after 3 to 4 issues that have come out and the editor-in-chief basically locking lips and going silent, I don't have any faith in that at all. You know, I would actually allow them to come on, talk about that kind of stuff, you know, tell us how they're going to fix that. I bet a lot of people would like to see, say, a G.I. Joe or a Transformers do well. But unfortunately, IDW does not want to go out and to talk to people, even with the standard fair decorum. And you can see that from their higher up positions. Now, I'm not talking about editor-in-chief. I haven't heard anything from them. But I do know that so many of the other people that are in positions of prominence, they were put in by Chris Rael. And that guy, he had a lot to say when he came out. He had a lot to say about how people within comic book consumption, how they're seen, and it makes me think that IDW deserves to be where they are. Now, when you look at IDW Entertainment, the show portion, what's very interesting there is they're actually making some money. So that tells you, when you look at the rest of the company is falling apart. It is a detriment. I mean, when you look at their 2018 revenues, they made $346,000. Unfortunately, when you're making $346,000, but your print area is bleeding to the point of almost $2.5 million, you got a problem. Now, looking at CTM as well, CTM is pretty flat. They seem to be a loss. I really don't know why they don't cut this portion, but you can see how they've lost so far $1.894 million, as opposed to last year. They were bleeding money, but they've lost even more, $746,000 more here, or 65% more. And again, these are negatives when you're looking at that revenue. I would encourage people to go through and really read through the function of this, what they do and all of that, to understand exactly what IDW does. Now, when you're talking about operating activities and cash flows, operating activities, they're reporting negative cash flow. Investing activities, negative cash flow. Financing activities, hey, at least they have some money coming in, but net decrease in cash and cash equivalents up. Look at that. Negatives right there to the tune of $2 million. Like I said, you cannot operate like this. This is bad news when you go through it. Now, when you look at how they have operated within comic books, if we start out on February and we look at how they perform, they had one comic book that cracked 10,000 units. That was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle line. When you're talking about, say, Hasbro comic books, and you find that they're running at, say, 7,000, when I see also Punk's Not Dead, it may sell 7,000 units. But the guy here, David Barnett, he actually wrote that nice piece comparing conservatives to the anti-Parkland school shooting survivor, essentially comparing conservatives to gunmen. Well, yeah, that says that thing isn't going to get the support that you would want all across the board. And you go through this and on, even, Hama and other people, they have gone crazy these days. And the sales show it. The quality of the comic books are not there anymore. And when you're looking at transformer lines, I don't even have a transformer pop up until 5,900 units. You got a problem there. I mean, really, like I say, looking at these numbers here, when you have Transformers versus Visionaries, you can't crack 5,000 units there. You see where Jim and the Holograms dimensions set and so on. Then when you look at the IDW's trade paperbacks, I mean, they have a few that crack over 1,000 here. You can see it's Star Wars, Star Trek. They had a Lovecraft Myth of Cthulhu book that came out, and so on. But, I mean, you can see these numbers are pretty damn flat when you go through it. Now, as far as their marketing share for this time, I mean, when you look at the numbers, when you're breaking them down, and you actually look at IDW within the overall units, they didn't crack 3% for that. And when you're looking at the overall dollars, they had almost 6%. And we go to the next month here for March. And again, remember, we're looking all the way up to April 30th, so it will be the end of April. Looking at this, they did better as far as numbers, but remember, they buy the rights to utilize all of these titles. I mean, they have a G.I. Joe title. It's a milestone title. It only sells 13,000 units. There was a time, when 13,000 units for a G.I. Joe title was unheard of, but now, I mean, that's pretty much unheard of, but the opposite direction. Star Wars, when you look at the numbers for that, they barely crack in 12.5 and a little bit above, but not over 13. And again, if we're nice and add 10% to it, although if you look at those digital declines as far as the report there, you would be really nice adding 10%. I mean, really, we would be talking more along probably 5%, if that, for all of their titles combined. You see a Crow title come out, number 1 sells 8,000 units, and so on. Spider Kings, which was actually a good book, selling almost 6,200, and that's all. Highest House, number 1, good book again, 6,600 units. It's a shame. I mean, there is nothing here when you get down to these numbers. And also with the trade paperbacks as well, you see a Star Wars cracking almost 1,600 units, but that's it. I mean, when you get into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle collections, and then you have Transformers, Redemption of Dinobots barely cracking 500. And then you look at their share of their overall units. They have a higher share of overall units at 3.28%. And then monetarily, they have a higher share here at 3.96%. Now, for the last month within that, for April 2018, you can see their Sonic line come across. This was supposed to be their big hitter, their salvation that was going to come up. When you look at those numbers, look how fast they fall off. And they keep falling off, too. The newer numbers, they're lower than this. So they go from 2,100, and of course they had some reprint. So, I mean, you're going to add on a few thousand more units through that. But still, when you look at those numbers, they're not great. This is the highest selling still that anything has had in quite some time, and you're only talking 2,100 units with it. Then, of course, after Sonic, you have Star Wars at 12,000 units, then Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle at 10,000, and then you're under 10,000 again. You have another Star Wars under 10,000 here. Star Trek, remember, again, they're paying for the rights to this stuff. It's amazing. How do you keep paying for the rights of something? An X-File comic book can barely crack 5,000 units. It wasn't good either when you got down to it. Here's old Ron Martz, he likes to run his mouth so much. Well, welcome to the under 4,000 sales unit, Ron. You did a really good job there. These people out there, they directly impact the companies that they publish with. Then you're talking about, none of their trade paperbacks actually make it over 1,000 units within that. Then when you look at the IDW, the share of the overall units here at 3.67%. And then as far as as money goes, they climbed somewhat. But again, you have to think about how much do they have to spend to get that little nudge. When you go from 3.96 to 4.08, what did you spend to get there? It's not like they went out and they had somebody come in, make some title for them. No, they're going out and they're renting commodities. So when you ask that kind of question, how does this company ever get better? Now, I would say one of the first things they need to do is they need to fire everyone that makes them look bad. And they need to go out and they need to follow either the Van Sciver routine or they need to follow, say, the Alterna, their routine, and looking at exactly how you get success there. Because this is basically failure personified. And if they keep this up for much longer, you would be looking at a company that would be closing its doors within 5 years. So anyhow, tell me what you think about this stuff. I will probably return to the numbers a few more times, looking at different things, but I wanted to really give you an idea of what everything looked like here. I would have gone to Diamond and compared the numbers, but when they've gone in and done their archives, they actually have not archived April yet. So you still have a gap there, and I need it for comparison. But anyhow, tell me what you think about this stuff. I mean, is it not insane? Thank you.